Once a poor cobbler lived in a small town earning a humble living by repairing shoes. Despite his poverty, he was known for his cheerful demeanor and constant singing every morning. As he worked on worn-out shoes, his joyful songs filled the air. He had little to his name, but his heart was light, and his life was simple. Not far from the cobbler's home lived a rich man who owned a large mansion and had more money than he could ever spend. But despite his wealth, he was deeply unhappy. He could not sleep at night, constantly worrying about his riches and fearing that someone might steal them one day. As the rich man lay in bed, unable to sleep, he heard the cobbler's cheerful singing and wondered how someone so poor could be so happy with his life. The next day, the rich man decided to visit the cobbler. He treated the cobbler, who was working on an old shoe. The rich man looked at him and said, "You always seem so happy. Tell me, what is your secret of your happiness in life?" The cobbler smiled. "There's no secret, sir. I am happy because I have enough. My work gives me just enough to eat, and that is all I need." The rich man frowned, thinking to himself, "How can this man be so happy when he has so little? And I am miserable with so much." He decided to test the cobbler to find out for himself what gave the simple cobbler his true happiness. "Have these, my friend," the rich man said, placing a heavy bag of gold coins on the cobbler's table. "Take this as a gift. You work hard, and you deserve more than just enough. This money will make your life easier." The cobbler was shocked by this unexpected surprise. He had never seen so much gold in his life. "Thank you, sir," he said happily. He held the bag tightly, feeling the weight of the coins. That night, for the first time, he did not sing. Instead, he sat by his table, staring at the bag of gold. As days passed, the cobbler's joy began to fade. He stopped singing while he worked, worried that someone might discover his newfound wealth. He hid the bag in his home, but couldn't sleep, fearing thieves might break in and steal it. His simple, carefree life had been replaced with anxiety and distrust. Even his work suffered, as his mind was constantly occupied with thoughts of the gold. Finally, the cob could take it no longer. He grabbed the bag of gold and went to the rich man's house. "Sir," he said, placing the bag on the table, "take back your gold. Since you gave it to me, I have lost my peace. I no longer sing, and my days are filled with worry. I would rather have my simple life and happiness than live with this burden." The rich man was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, taking the bag of gold. "You have taught me an important lesson today," he said. "Happiness is not about having more, but being content with what you have." The cobbler left the house feeling free again. That evening, the townspeople once again heard his cheerful singing. As he worked in our lives, we often think that more money or possessions will bring us happiness. But this is not always true. True happiness comes from being content with what we have and living a life free of unnecessary worries. The cobbler was happy not because he had will, but because he had peace of mind and a simple, fulfilling routine. The story also teaches us that wealth without peace is a heavy burden. The rich man, despite all his money, was unhappy because he lacked the contentment that the cobbler had. When we chase material wealth, we might lose the joy of living in the present moment. Instead of seeking more, we should focus on appreciating the little things that truly make life meaningful: peace, simplicity, and gratitude. Now, based on this amazing story, imagine a small village bustling with the sounds of daily life, where a poor cobbler sat under a tree repairing shoes. His life was simple, his belongings meager, but his heart brimmed with joy. Every morning, his cheerful singing echoed through the village. Now, picture a wealthy man living in a grand haveli nearby, surrounded by luxuries and riches. Yet this man couldn't sleep peacefully at night. He was haunted by fears of losing his wealth, consumed by his worries. This story of the cobbler and the rich man teaches us profound lessons that resonate deeply with the wisdom of Acharya Chanakya. Today, we will focus on 12 lessons. Lesson 1. Contentment is the key to happiness. Let's begin with the cobbler's secret to happiness: contentment. When the rich man asked him why he was always happy, the cobbler replied, "I have just enough, and that is all I need." This statement is a reflection of Chanakya's saying, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." In our lives, we often believe that happiness lies in acquiring more money, more possessions, more achievements. But the cobbler's life reminds us that joy comes not from how much we have, but from being satisfied with what we have. The cobbler had very little, yet his heart was light, and his life was free of worries. On the other hand, the rich man, despite his wealth, was miserable because he could never feel secure or content with what he had. Chanakya also warns us that discontentment creates unnecessary suffering. When we constantly chase after more, we never pause to enjoy the present. The cobbler shows us that when we are grateful for the small things in life, a meal on the table, meaningful work, and good health, we can experience a deep sense of joy. Now, let me ask you, are you content with your life? Or do you find yourself chasing after things you believe will make you happy? This story teaches us that contentment is not about settling for less. It's about appreciating what truly matters. Lesson 2. Wealth without peace is a burden. When the cobbler received the bag of gold, he was thrilled at first, but that joy quickly faded. He stopped singing. He lost sleep. He began to fear thieves and became distrustful of others. That bag of gold, which was supposed to make his life easier, brought nothing but anxiety. This mirrors Chanakya's wisdom. Wealth should serve humans, not enslave them. The rich man, too, was a prisoner of his own riches. His sleepless nights and constant worry over his wealth showed that material possessions cannot guarantee happiness. He lacked the one thing the cobbler had in abundance: peace of mind. Think about your own life. Have you ever achieved something, a promotion, a big purchase, or a financial goal, only to feel more stressed than before? This is because external possessions cannot fill the void left by internal unrest. True wealth lies in a peaceful heart. The cobbler made a brave decision when he returned the gold, choosing his simple life and peace over material wealth. It was a reminder that sometimes letting go of what we think we need is the key to reclaiming our happiness. Lesson 3. Simplicity brings freedom. The third lesson from the story is the power of simplicity. The cobbler's life was uncomplicated before the bag of gold arrived. He repaired shoes, earned enough to eat, and sang while he worked. This simplicity gave him freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from greed, and freedom from the burdens of wealth. Chanakya emphasized simplicity as a virtue, stating, "Excess of anything is harmful." The cobbler's life was balanced and harmonious until he was introduced to excess in the form of gold. The moment his simple routine was disrupted, his joy disappeared. In our fast-paced world, where consumerism urges us to buy more, own more, and do more, simplicity often feels out of reach. But just like the cobbler, we can choose a simpler path by focusing on what truly matters. Think of your daily routine. Are you overcomplicating your life with unnecessary possessions or ambitions? Simplifying doesn't mean giving up on dreams or aspirations. It means removing the clutter, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, that keeps us from experiencing true freedom. The cobbler's life teaches us that simplicity is not a sign of weakness, but a source of strength. It allows us to enjoy life fully, without being weighed down by unnecessary worries or distractions. Continuing from the story of the cobbler and the rich man, let's explore 3 more profound lessons that connect to our daily lives. These lessons are timeless, as highlighted by Acharya Chanakya's wisdom, and can help us live more fulfilling lives if we truly embrace them. Lesson 4. Gratitude is the foundation of joy. Think about the cobbler's life before he received the bag of gold. Every morning, he sang while repairing shoes, filling the air with joy. Why was he so happy? Because he was grateful. He appreciated the simple things in life: his work, his meals, and his peace of mind. His gratitude made him content. Acharya Chanakya once said, "Gratitude leads to happiness." When we practice gratitude, we shift our focus from what we lack to what we have. The cobbler didn't need riches to feel fulfilled. He was thankful for his just enough life, which allowed him to find joy in his daily routine. On the other hand, the rich man, despite having everything, felt a deep void. Why? Because he wasn't grateful for his wealth. Instead, he was consumed by fear of losing it. Gratitude is not about denying our ambitions or ignoring our problems. It is about recognizing the blessings we already have and drawing strength from them. Ask yourself, how often do you take a moment to be grateful? Do you start your day thinking about what's missing or appreciating what's present? The cobbler's life reminds us that gratitude transforms even the simplest of lives into one filled with happiness. Let's remember to count our blessings, no matter how small they may seem. Lesson 5. Anxiety diminishes happiness. Now let's look at the change that occurred in the cobbler's life after he received the bag of gold. His joy disappeared. He stopped singing. He couldn't sleep. The constant fear of thieves and worry about his new wealth consumed him. Chanakya's wisdom is clear. Excessive worry is like a disease. Anxiety not only steals our peace of mind, but also paralyzes us, preventing us from living in the moment. The cobbler's story shows us how quickly worry can turn even a joyful life into a stressful one. The rich man, too, was a victim of his own anxiety. Despite his vast wealth, he spent sleepless nights worrying about it. Both men teach us that the true enemy of happiness is not poverty or wealth. It is fear and anxiety. What about us? How much of our day is spent worrying about the future? Whether it's financial security, relationships, or career goals, we often let anxiety control our thoughts. The story reminds us that no amount of wealth or success can eliminate worry unless we learn to control our mind. So, how do we deal with anxiety? One way is to practice mindfulness, living in the present moment, just as the cobbler did before the gold arrived in his life. Another is to simplify our desires, as Chanakya advises, so that our focus remains on what truly matters. Lesson 6. Balance is the secret to a happy life. Let's discuss the importance of balance. The cobbler and the rich man represent two extremes. One had very little and was happy, while the other had too much and was miserable. But when the cobbler received the bag of gold, his life fell out of balance. The simplicity that brought him joy was replaced with complexity and fear. Chanakya's teaching, excess of anything is harmful, is perfectly illustrated in this story. Excessive wealth, ambition, or even worry can disrupt the harmony of life. Balance, on the other hand, keeps us grounded and allows us to enjoy life fully. Achieving balance doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for success or growth. It means we should aim for moderation, ensuring that no single aspect of life overwhelms the others. The cobbler was happiest when his life was balanced, when his work provided just enough, and his heart was free of unnecessary burdens. Think about your own life. Are you living in balance, or are you tipping the scales in favor of one area, like work or wealth, while neglecting others, like health, relationships, or peace of mind? Balance requires us to make thoughtful choices and prioritize what truly adds value to our lives. The cobbler teaches us that a life in balance is a life of freedom. When he returned the bag of gold, he reclaimed his simplicity and joy, showing us that letting go of excess is sometimes the key to finding equilibrium. As we dive deeper into the story of the cobbler and the rich man, let us reflect on 3 more important lessons. These lessons remind us that happiness is not about what we acquire, but how we live and think. Inspired by Acharya Chanakya's teachings, let's explore how these principles apply to our lives. Lesson 7. Work brings purpose. Imagine the cobbler's life before the bag of gold disrupted his routine. He spent his days repairing shoes, humming cheerful tunes as he worked. This routine may have seemed ordinary, but it gave him a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Chanakya's wisdom, work is the root of wealth and meaning, captures this idea perfectly. The cobbler's work wasn't just about earning money. It was about contributing to his community and finding joy in his craft. This sense of purpose kept him happy and focused, even though his earnings were modest. The rich man, on the other hand, lacked such purpose. His wealth, while abundant, gave him no direction or fulfillment, leaving him restless and unhappy. Let's reflect on our own lives. Do we find purpose in the work we do, or do we see it merely as a means to an end? Purposeful work doesn't have to be grand or glamorous. It just needs to give us a sense of satisfaction and contribute positively to the world around us. The story teaches us that no matter how small or simple our role may seem, embracing it with dedication and joy can lead to a fulfilling life. Purposeful work, as the cobbler demonstrates, is not about wealth but about meaning. Lesson 8. Overthinking steals joy. Let's move to a universal problem we all face: overthinking. The moment the cobbler received the bag of gold, his thoughts began to spiral. He worried about thieves. He stayed awake at night imagining scenarios where he might lose his treasure. The cheerful songs that once filled the air were replaced with silence and anxiety. Chanakya's teaching, excessive worry is like a disease, reflects this reality. Overthinking is a silent thief that robs us of peace and happiness. Like the cobbler, we often let our minds dwell on what-if scenarios, turning minor concerns into major sources of stress. The rich man's sleepless nights over his wealth also show how overthinking can make even abundance feel like a curse. Now ask yourself, how much time do you spend overanalyzing situations in your life? Whether it's about finances, relationships, or decisions, overthinking creates unnecessary mental clutter and drains our energy. The cobbler teaches us that clarity and peace come from focusing on the present. Instead of worrying about what might happen, we can remind ourselves to live in the moment. Chanakya's advice to avoid excessive concern isn't about ignoring responsibilities. It's about trusting the process and letting go of fears that serve no purpose. Lesson 9. Balance is the secret to a harmonious life. Let's revisit the profound lesson of balance. In the cobbler's story, both he and the rich man lacked balance, albeit in different ways. The cobbler initially lived a balanced life, working just enough to meet his needs and finding joy in simplicity. But the bag of gold disrupted that balance, pushing him toward excess worry and fear. The rich man, too, was trapped in the imbalance of hoarding wealth while neglecting his peace of mind. Chanakya's wisdom, excess of anything is harmful, reminds us that moderation is essential. A life of balance ensures that no single pursuit, whether it's wealth, work, or even leisure, overwhelms the others. So, how do we achieve balance? Start by evaluating your priorities. Are you dedicating too much time to one aspect of life while ignoring others? For example, are you so focused on earning money that you forget to nurture your relationships or health? The cobbler found his balance again when he returned the bag of gold. By letting go of what he didn't need, he reclaimed his happiness and simplicity. This act reminds us that balance often requires us to make tough choices, letting go of excess to create space for harmony. As we conclude the profound lessons from the story of the cobbler and the rich man, let us explore 3 final insights. These timeless principles, drawn from the wisdom of Acharya Chanakya, remind us that the quality of our life is shaped by how we think, feel, and act, not by what we own. Lesson 10. Detachment brings freedom. When the cobbler returned the bag of gold to the rich man, he did something remarkable. He chose his peace of mind over material wealth. This act was not just about giving up the gold. It was about embracing detachment. Acharya Chanakya aptly said, through renunciation, one attains immortality or freedom. Detachment doesn't mean we abandon all possessions or ambitions. It means we don't let them control us. The cobbler's life became miserable, not because he had gold, but because he became attached to it. His thoughts and emotions revolved around protecting it, and this attachment stole his freedom. The rich man, too, was trapped by his attachment to wealth. Despite his riches, he lived in fear and anxiety, unable to enjoy what he had. Both characters teach us that clinging too tightly to material things, or even to ideas and outcomes, can make us prisoners of our own desires. Think about your own life. Is there something you're holding onto so tightly that it's causing you stress or fear? Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means letting go of the need to control and possess. When we detach, we find freedom. Freedom to live fully, without fear of loss or failure. Lesson 11. Inner peace is true wealth. As the cobbler walked away from the rich man's mansion, he felt a lightness in his heart. He had reclaimed his inner peace, which no amount of gold could buy. Chanakya's teaching, peace is the ultimate happiness, perfectly encapsulates this truth. Inner peace is not something external. It is a state of mind. The cobbler had peace because he lived a simple life free of unnecessary worries. When the gold entered his life, it disrupted that peace. The rich man, too, was a stark contrast. Despite his material wealth, he lacked the one thing the cobbler naturally had: peace of mind. What about us? How often do we compromise our peace for temporary gains? Whether it's chasing after promotions, striving for perfection, or worrying about the future, we often let external pressures dictate our inner state. But the story reminds us that true wealth lies not in what we have, but in how we feel. Inner peace comes from aligning our values with our actions, from living in simplicity, and from letting go of unnecessary desires. Ask yourself, what truly makes you feel at peace, and are you prioritizing it in your life? Lesson 12. Appreciating the present is the essence of happiness. Finally, the cobbler's story teaches us the importance of living in the present. Before the bag of gold disrupted his life, the cobbler found joy in his daily routine, repairing shoes, singing songs, and appreciating the little things. He lived in the moment, unburdened by regrets of the past or fears of the future. Chanakya's wisdom, the right time brings the right reward, reminds us to trust the flow of life and focus on the present. The cobbler's happiness stemmed from his ability to immerse himself in the now, while the rich man's constant worry about his wealth kept him stuck in a cycle of fear and dissatisfaction. In our fast-paced world, how often do we pause to enjoy the present moment? We're often so busy chasing future goals or dwelling on past mistakes that we forget to appreciate the here and now. The cobbler's return to his simple life and his joyful singing remind us that happiness is found in the present, not in what we hope to achieve or avoid. So, let's ask ourselves, are we truly living in the present, or are we letting the past and future rob us of today's joys? The cobbler shows us that when we embrace the present with gratitude and simplicity, life becomes a melody worth singing. Let us take inspiration from his journey and consider how we can let go of unnecessary attachments, prioritize our inner peace, and find joy in the present moment. For it is in these simple but profound acts that we uncover the true essence of happiness. Thank you.